That was one of the opening moments from the documentary film, which ultimately was entitled The UnRedacted, which premiered at the Sundance Film Festival earlier this year. The film follows 4 Yemeni men who were held at Guantanamo Bay for their alleged involvement with terror groups responsible for the 9/11 attacks. They were later released, and after returning to their home country, the men were ordered to undergo intensive counseling at a newly constructed facility intended to de-radicalize them. The film was met with mostly positive reviews upon its debut, but soon after, controversy took hold. The Sundance Film Festival would end up issuing an apology for even screening the documentary in the first place, and the film's director would find herself nearly broke. In a moment, we will speak with the filmmaker, but first, for more on the reaction to the film, we're joined by national reporter for the New York Times, Michael Powell.
Michael, thanks so much for being with us. This is a remarkable story. We showed the first part of their story, what one of these Yemeni men said, and how they were broken through the process, how some of them survived it. It's a remarkable story. I found it to be a remarkable documentary, but the reaction to the documentary also remarkable as well. Walk our viewers through it.
Yeah, it was a curious thing. It started off, as you note, getting great reviews, including from, frankly, left liberal places like the Guardian newspaper. And the worry was initially that they were going to get controversy from the right, that, you're humanizing terrorists, or men accused of terrorism. In fact, the attack came very strongly from the kind of cultural and political left. There are exceptions to that, but they attacked it. Many Muslim and Arab American documentarians attacked it as anti-Arab, as Islamophobic, and raised the question, along with a number of their white allies, of, well, what's this white woman doing making a documentary on Arab men, as they put it, South Arabian men.
Yeah, and in your piece in the Times, you quoted Ken Burns and other documentarians who said, well, I can't just do documentaries about white people. Yeah, obviously, we're glad that Ken Burns can look across the wide range of human existence and other great documentaries. But I must say, Michael, I agree completely with you. I saw the documentary after I heard about the controversy, and I must say, the first 30 minutes, I was uncomfortable as a person who supported the war on terror. I was uncomfortable. Going, wait a second, are these guys telling the truth? Is this propaganda, anti-American propaganda? Did this really happen? We're letting these alleged terrorists, run down the United States, and then you go to the next. And so I say that actually as a positive thing for the documentary, because like great docs, you get into the worldview of everybody, and you go through this entire process. And so I thought, like you and like many others, the attacks would come from the right, when in fact they make a lot of these guys, I think, far more sympathetic than most Americans have ever seen since 9/11, since the Gitmo controversies.
Oh, I very much agree. I mean, it's kind of fascinating that way, right? And you're left, I think at the end, you're left with a ambivalence, with a sense of, well, are they fully rehabilitated? Are they, but that, again, it strikes me that's very often the stuff of art,
yes,
right? Where it's not, as one documentarian said to me, it's not like arrows to Candyland. It's not saying you're going to think this. It's forcing you to engage with these men in all of their complexity as human beings. It doesn't say you have to come out, you know, applauding them, but it is, right, it's a pretty nuanced look at these guys.
It is, Mika, an extremely nuanced look at these guys. It's tough on the United States in parts. It's tough on the Saudis at times. And you see these men who started this process supporting the terror attacks, as we saw in that opening piece, and by the end being broken. And in fact, even in this Saudi rehab center, they're saying it's tough. Even when you get out of here, life is going to be tough. It's going to be difficult. And sure enough, they're alone at the end, walking through Saudi Arabia, a society that doesn't allow them to be active participants in that society.
Well, why don't we bring in the director of the film, Meg Smaker, and thank you very much for coming on the show today. I'd love for you to tell us your story, what your intention, what you created versus the severe reaction it got.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. The UnRedacted is about a group of men who, after spending 15 years in Guantanamo, are sent to the world's first rehabilitation center for terrorists located in Saudi Arabia. All the main characters are Yemeni, so they're sent to a country that is not their own. And, you know, it took me about over 5 years to make this. It was a year just to get access, 3 years of filming with these men where we follow them through a year and a half of the rehab program, and then a year and a half after they get out, where they try to find jobs, a wife, and start families, and then 2 years of editing. And I think for me, what I really loved about this film is for the last 20 years of the war on terror, we've talked about these men. But this is kind of our first opportunity to talk with them and to hear from them directly. And I think that's really imperative because as I was making this film, I think for me, it reminded me of a story my dad told me when I was younger about starfish. And he told me the story about this fishing village in Northern California who had a problem with invasive starfish. So one day, all the fishermen decided to get together, collect the starfish, and kill them all, and cut them up into 3, 4, 5 pieces. Thinking they were dead, they threw those pieces back into the ocean, not knowing that starfish regenerate, right? So the whole starfish population exploded and devastated the local fishing economy. The moral of the story being, when you try to fix a problem you do not understand, you usually make it worse. And so what this film seeks to do is try to understand these men, who they are on a human level. And it kind of dives into their different motivations, their backgrounds, and kind of like the experience they had both in Guantanamo and before. And I think for me, what's been really kind of inspiring is a lot of the reactions that we have gotten from the few people who were able to see it during Sundance, and a lot of those people, surprisingly, were from the vet community. A lot of vets from Afghanistan and Iraq have reached out and sent emails and messages saying that they've watched, or this film has been one of the more healing things that they've seen. One vet wrote me, said, when I got back to the United States, I would never admit this to anyone, but I missed war. I didn't miss fighting. I missed the camaraderie. I missed the brotherhood. I missed the sense of purpose. And I haven't found that since I've been back. But when I saw your film, it was the first time that I saw that. And it was really shocking to me because these were the people that I was sent to kill. And he said to me, he's like, I realized that I had more in common with the men that I was fighting than the men that sent me to war. And I thought that was really profound to hear. And that's why I think this film is so important, especially when you get messages like that. I get messages from the Yemeni community who are basically saying, we see the news talk about Syria and Ukraine, but Yemen is continually ignored, and seeing our people and some of the issues that we've had to deal with in your film has meant a lot. So it's really interesting to have those two groups really respond to this film. That's why for me it's so important that it gets out there. And that's just been really hard to do with all these attacks.
With what Meg it did, I mean, just to even more background, given that she talks about the 5 years of work that she put into this, but she was a 21-year-old firefighter when the plane struck the World Trade Center. She went to Afghanistan. She traveled through the country, hitchhiked through the country, learned Arabic. And, you know, I mean, the creation of the film is total immersion on her part to create that better understanding.
Right, and Michael, how fascinating that the critics were so simple-minded, and in fact, you talk about how I think a film festival in New Zealand decided to screen it, and some critics from L.A. were trying to get them to cancel her all across the world, all the way across the world in New Zealand.
Yeah, no, it's the reaction to the film from some of the fiercest critics is fierce, and they you know, it's. Yes, and it continued actually even after my article appeared. I mean, if anything, maybe with rejoined fury. And there is, you know, there's also this, they raise a sort of a series of questions. So one of the principal questions was that of identity, right? Who is this woman to be making this documentary? But then, you know, they go on to say, well, you know, people who are incarcerated can't give their permission to be interviewed, which is an interesting thought for any journalist or documentarian. Of course, many great documentaries having been made on people who are imprisoned. You get arguments that they, you know, that well, some of the former Guantanamo Bay prisoners have opposed this film. I mean, it's a sort of a frankly a moving target, an ever-moving target, and you're told, well, no, that isn't the question. This is the question. This is the question.
The film is The UnRedacted. Documentary filmmaker Meg Smaker, thank you very much. New York Times reporter Michael Powell, thank you as well. A fascinating controversy, and people should make their own decision.
It's a remarkable movie
as to whether they want to see it.
It's a remarkable doc, and again, there will be people that might be upset on different sides, but that's what great art does. Is it puts the information out in front of you and lets you make your decision. But the fact that she was canceled, it's just ridiculous.